So I think for me, that underlying chronic fear of like, what is this whole existence and where am I going when I die? And it's really scary that I can't escape death. That fear was driving some of that panic attacks and anxiety. And when that was eviscerated, when I chose faith, right, and then leaned into and became a believer, it's changed my life. All right. Welcome to Stronger Weekly. I am your host, Jesse Carrajat. Thank you so much for being here. I'm recording this on Halloween. You're listening to it after Halloween, but I hope you had a great holiday. We are now in the month of November 2025. So welcome to like what I feel like is like the true transition fall month. November is my favorite month. We got my birthday, big 41 this year. We got Thanksgiving, we got football, leaves changing, cool air coming, just an awesome time of year. So I hope your fall is off to a great start. You just heard, to kick off the episode, an excerpt from my conversation with my good pal, Justin Maziarz, who joined the show, who typically joins once a month. This week, we unpack stress. What is it? What causes it? What's happening to our minds and our bodies when we are stressed? What is the difference between short-term stress and chronic stress? And I think most importantly, how do you know if you're stressed and what can you do about it? So that'll be the deep dive on the second half of the episode. But as always, we're going to kick off the episode here with our top health and fitness headlines of the week. Let's jump in. Your first health and fitness headline of the week is an autism link to COVID in pregnancy, which is raising concern. So big warning for expecting parents. So a new study published in Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data shows that women who contracted COVID-19 during pregnancy had a significantly increased risk of having children later diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, otherwise known as ASD. So according to the research, the rate of ASD diagnosis rose by about 34% among children whose mothers contracted COVID in the second or third trimester. Lead author Dr. Jane Smith, sounds like a real name, commented, quote, "Our findings suggest prenatal SARS-CoV-2 exposure may alter neurodevelopment in ways we are only now beginning to understand," end quote. The takeaway: if you're pregnant or plan to be, focus on preventative measures like vaccinations, masking when needed, reducing exposure, and for parents of young kids, be alert to early developmental screening. Don't wait. Next up, a new survey finds that Americans are oblivious to the cancer risks from alcohol consumption. You guys know I like to pile on alcohol here. So a new survey published in JAMA Oncology finds that 52.9% of U.S. adults who drink believe drinking alcohol does not affect cancer risk. Wrong. Despite robust evidence that alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen. That's bad. Lead researcher Dr. Sanjay Shatay said, quote, "It's concerning that people who drink alcohol are the ones most likely to believe it has no effect on cancer risk." The study also notes that alcohol contributes to roughly 5.5% of new cancer diagnoses worldwide. If you drink, understand the risk, folks. No amount is completely safe. I think more and more studies are coming out. It used to be that, alcohol use could hurt your liver, hurt some organs. It can cause catastrophic and dangerous behavior. But now more and more research showing that routine alcohol consumption can actually be a cause of cancer. So count your drinks, try to moderate, folks. Your next headline: CTE is caused by more than just repeated head trauma. So new research published in Nature reveals that athletes exposed to years of repetitive head impacts, RHI, show early signs of brain cell loss, inflammation, and vascular damage, even in the absence of documented concussion. So one co-author stated, quote, "Damage can accumulate earlier and more subtly than previously thought. This raises red flags for contact sports athletes, veterans, and even youth leagues." So practical takeaway: consider limiting exposure to repeated subconcussive impacts. Helmets do not eliminate the risk. Ensure baseline testing before high-risk careers, and push for proper recovery and symptom monitoring. So translated, simply put, more research coming out highlighting the risk associated with repeated head trauma, microtraumas through contact sports such as hockey, rugby, football, and otherwise. And if you're a parent considering putting your children into those sports, make sure you talk to your doctor. And there are tests emerging that might even be able to help you discern if your child is at higher risk for developing CTE or like symptoms. Your next health and fitness headline has to do with cilantro and more studies showing that its positive health impact for your body. So cilantro is trending as a blood sugar regulator. Animal studies show coriander seed extract boosted insulin release in diabetic rats. The British Journal of Nutrition study found coriander increased glucose transport 1.6 times in muscle tissue, but human evidence is thin and inconsistent. So look into cilantro, as long as it doesn't taste like soap, and there could be unexpected health benefits for your metabolism, inflammation, all those things. And your last health and fitness headline, this one, just one I wanted to talk about, frankly. So the state of Alabama has passed a new, quote, sin tax. That's right, SIN, sin tax. So, in a first of its kind move, the state of Alabama has pushed legislation to levy a 10% tax on pornography websites, with all proceeds earmarked for mental health services. Research shows that problematic pornography use, otherwise known as PPU, affects around 13% of users and correlates with higher rates of anxiety, depression, and impaired emotional regulation. One recent study noted, quote, the high-frequency PPU group exhibited lower emotional regulation and significantly higher depressive symptoms. While critics say the tax might miss root causes, the spotlight is on the mental health burden tied to compulsive behaviors of any kind. Look, we don't talk about pornography a lot, maybe not enough on this show, but it's disastrous to the individual who consumes it and in the community in which where they live and the society more broadly. So it's no joke. If you are struggling with pornography use or any impulsive behavior for that matter, talk to a professional, be honest. I know it can be vulnerable, but just get the help that you need, look for community support, and treat it like any other behavioral health issue out there in America. So Alabama paving the way, taxing these porn sites. Good for them. I hope other states follow suit. That's it for this week's health and fitness headlines. Justin Maziarz joins me on the other side for a deep dive on all things stress. Just a quick word from our sponsor, and I will see you on the other side. Look, if you're like me, you enjoy a drink every now and then. A glass of wine with dinner, a cold beer after a long week, maybe even a night out with friends. But you want to stay in control. That's why I'm excited about Clutch, the newest innovation from Or Health. Clutch is a fast-acting naltrexone mint you take before you drink. It dissolves quickly, absorbs through your mouth, and starts working fast, helping you curb the cravings without giving up drinking altogether. It's discreet, portable, and designed for real life. The mints come in a sleek, pocket-sized case that goes wherever you go. If you've been trying to moderate or simply drink smarter, this is the tool that you need. To get started, text STRENGTH to 710-710. That's STRENGTH to 710-710. Answer a few quick questions, and your Clutch will be shipped directly to your door. No more hangovers, no more guilt, just the control you need in the palm of your hand. Bulletproof your drinking with Clutch now. All right, everybody, welcome to Stronger Weekly. I'm your host, Jesse Carrajat, here with my good buddy, Justin Maziarz. What's up, Justin?
Hello, hello. It is Halloween today for the listeners listening. Happy Halloween. I hope everyone has their fun costumes picked out.
Yeah, well, actually, we're recording on Halloween, but they're listening on Monday. So I think the correct greeting there was, I hope you had a good Halloween in your costume.
I hope you had a good Halloween.
The plan originally, audience, was that we were going to show up in costume, but that kind of fell apart because one of us had a stressful morning, which is a perfect segue into what we're going to chat about, which is stress. And I love that Justin's coming in here having to react to what was his stressful morning. How you feeling?
Yeah.
You feeling good?
How timely. Feeling much better now. Yes, this morning did start off with a few little bumps in the road and some surprises. My 7-year-old walked out of the shower today with a rash that was not there when she went to bed last night, all over her face and neck and stomach and arms. So that resulted in a little bit of a scramble, but lo and behold, Benadryl fixed it, and it was a result of a new hair mask product that she had purchased with her own money and was very excited about, but I don't think is going to be using it again.
So it feels like this is serendipitous that we should be talking about it. So what we're going to do first, we're going to spend some time on what I'll call just the science of stress, define what it is, what's happening in our bodies, what are some of the causes. We'll kind of weave in some studies and statistics, and then we'll just kind of open up to more of a conversation around our personal experiences with it, so that hopefully anyone listening is thinking maybe, hey, do I have a problem with stress? Can I change my circumstances, or can I change how I cope with it and try to find a more balanced life where stress is not a factor?
Sounds great. And unfortunately, very relatable topic, as we all can tell.
100%. When we get into the statistics later on the most common causes of stress, it just so happens that you and I find ourselves in a season of life where we are susceptible to those causes, and more on that in a second. So let's start with the scientific definition of stress. So what is stress? According to the American Psychological Association, stress is, quote, maybe I'm stressed right now, I can't focus, quote, the physiological or psychological response to internal or external demands that exceed a person's perceived ability to cope. And just a quote from Dr. Robert Sapolsky, quote, stress is not what happens to you. Stress is how your body responds to what happens to you. So just some science around like what's actually happening in the body, hormones, brain, all the things. So the first thing that happens, right? A threat is perceived. And guys, please give me some sympathy. I'm reading notes and there are some complicated words in here. And
You got that. We've been practicing, Jesse.
Maybe I am stressed, but here we go. All right. So first, like what's happening? A threat is perceived, real or imagined. Those are actually my words. I'm adding to these notes, Justin. And what happens when we perceive a threat, right? Hypothalamic. I jacked it up. We talked about this before the show. Here's
You're
the
doing
word.
great, Jeff.
Thank you. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. We're gonna abbreviate that. The HPA axis activates. That's the first thing that happens. I'm gonna try it again for my pride. Hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis activates. Feeling good. And then what happens is something called CRH is released, which triggers, lots of letters, ACTH from the pituitary gland. And this is the most important part if you forget all that, which triggers a word we all know, cortisol.
Hey.
Okay? Perceived threat, stuff happens, cortisol released. Why does that matter? Cortisol is a stress response, thinking that you're in danger, which raises blood sugar, blood pressure, and alertness, which is good if it's a real threat and you need to survive, but it is terrible when we're constantly in that cycle of that cortisol being released. And more on that later. I think something, and we already kind of touched on this, but 100 years ago, the threats that people were responding to were real.
Legit life and danger threats.
Exactly. Real stuff. Like I said, a storm is coming. And by the way, 100 years ago, you didn't get the severe weather alert. The tornado just popped up. Bang, bang on the door in the middle of the night. Real conflict, real stuff. Today, it's Slack notifications and emails. Oh, I heard a quote. I'm kind of making it my own, but our nervous systems evolved for lions and tornadoes, not push notifications, budget deadlines, and Amber alerts.
How about that for a perspective check? My gosh.
Right? It's like, think about how God made us, how we were wired. It's like it's healthy to have a stress response, but not for the stuff that we're dealing with in 2025.
It shouldn't be your first response. And Jess, you and I were talking before we hopped on here, but Exhibit A, another thing that happened to me this morning, I got a Slack notification that I wasn't expecting from somebody very high up in my company, my chief client officer, asking to hop on a quick call for 10 minutes. So my immediate response to that was, oh shit, I'm getting fired. And then in my brain, I'm like, What did I do wrong yesterday? I thought I did great. I thought I had this into my team's doing this, and ended up being a really cool opportunity that got presented to me. And I'm the only one it got presented to. So like, that is how conditioned that our brains get, because we are so used to automatically thinking whatever is coming up is negative, and I have to be ready for the worst case scenario at all times. And then we wonder why it takes one small little thing to set us over the edge and for the panic attack to ensue. And one of my therapists over the years actually gave me this analogy and visualization, which I found still helpful today, is like, say you got a cup in your hand, and that cup is your anxiety cup. And all throughout the day, little things are pouring into that cup, from emails to you're stressed out about getting the kids on time to practice when you know you got a late meeting, to this doctor's appointment, to this finance issue, to this payment that you have to make. Your cup is already this close to overflowing. And then you're walking out of the house with the kids to take them to cheerleading and you stub your little toe. And
Oof.
that is the straw that breaks the camel's back and sets you into an oblivion. Like, it's so true. Like, it's not the one thing, it's not the thing that set you off. It's the fact that you refuse to acknowledge all of the other stressors already until it's too late. And then
Yep.
you end up having a panic attack and think you're dying in order to realize, oh shit,
Yep.
I should probably address this.
Look, life can be hard and stressful sometimes. We all know that. But when it comes to supplements, why is it that nobody talks about stress and resilience? For me, I take the adaptogen stack from Momentous Supplements. It's a daily blend of ashwagandha, rhodiola, and L-theanine, all clinically backed to help you stay calm, focused, and resilient. I'm proudly partnered with Momentous Supplements because they are the industry's best. They don't cut corners. Everything's third-party tested, used by pro athletes, and high quality. Head to livemomentous.com and use code STRENGTH for 35% off your first order. Again, that's livemomentous.com, code word STRENGTH for 35% off your first order, and get started today. 100%. It's too much. It's just too much stuff to handle and to hold on to. And anyone that's experienced stress before knows what it feels like to read a negative email, or in your case, like, oh shit, this is mysterious. Could this be bad? And the reality is that there must be patterns underneath that where the thing really was bad. And this is an actual threat. And now, what is the threat? It's not physical danger. If you really peel back that onion, if the meeting that you're going to get into is actually something like worst case scenario, there's financial pressure under there. There's career, there's all that, and it's real.
Man.
So let's talk about, which unfortunately is the reality, chronic stress, and that most people probably don't realize that they are living in a state of this kind of chronic stress response because of the reasons we've mentioned, right? So this process of threat, central nervous system activation, cortisol release, and then of course the response, which is both biological, right, inside, internal, and also mentally how we experience the world, right? So a couple just kind of science-backed facts about chronic stress and what happens, right? So first one, chronic stress shrinks the hippocampus, which is our memory center, and enlarges the amygdala. Why does that mean? Literally, our memory could start to suffer, and then our amygdala becomes more reactive and more perceptive and more sensitive to things and misconceiving things that aren't real threats, right? Secondly, cortisol suppresses testosterone. And I know we want to talk about this in a little bit, but it suppresses your testosterone and thyroid hormones, impairing your metabolism, ability to lose fat, have a healthy metabolism, muscle growth, and mood. I think people intuit the mood thing, but maybe they don't necessarily understand what it's doing to your metabolism and ability to grow muscle. Two more. Third one, it blunts dopamine signaling, reducing your motivation and pleasure, and also your response to normal everyday life events and moments that could be giving you joy. It can start to mute that. Things like hugs, kisses, sunsets, walks, nature, sunlight, and just some symptoms of chronic stress: fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, irritability, cravings, and not just food, alcohol, substances, escape, coping mechanisms, lowered libido, muscle loss, and weight gain. I mean, this list is terrible. The only thing it's missing is death.
Yeah, it's not far behind after all of that. So,
Right? So I think, just to pause for 1 second, I think sometimes we might go in and out of life and think, I'm just tired because life is hard.
yeah.
But we
Yep.
don't question, life is hard because I'm stressed. Do I need to be? Can I change my circumstances or my coping mechanisms? So according to the APA Stress in America report, and this is from 2023, here are the most common sources of stress: financial pressure, overwork, overstimulation. This one's interesting: social comparison.
The thief of joy.
Poor sleep, trauma, substance use, which is interesting because substance use can be a reason, like a reaction to
Yep.
stress.
Or a
And
cause.
then on the other end, the stress source itself, which is it's interesting. Toxic ambition, I would tie that back to overwork.
Yeah.
Relational conflict, totally understandable. And this next one, a loss of control. Lots of stuff there. But when you hear Justin, his question for you, when you hear those most common causes of stress, financial pressure, overwork, overstimulation, which ties into parenting, social comparison, all those
Yeah.
things. Um, how does that land with you? Does it resonate? Are you in that
My gosh.
season?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I feel like I've unfortunately so many examples of what stress unchecked looks like, and how that can slowly start taking its toll on you. But like everything you said, from the financial pressure to the relational conflict, overstimulation, work, trauma, health stuff, like the loss of control, I think, is one of the key ones that I have learned with myself that I struggle with. And everyone, you could hear that list and think that's just life, man. Like, we all deal with it. Yeah, you're not wrong. We do all deal with it, but some of us can deal with it in better ways than others, or you know aren't don't have to learn the hard way. Like some of
Yep.
us. So, example of stress being left unchecked for myself, ended up, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago now, just that I ended up being hospitalized because I thought I was having a heart attack in the middle of the night, and it ended up being a panic attack. But I didn't see the signs coming, and I should have. Hindsight's 2020, but the panic attack happened at 3 in the morning. That day, I had found out one of my best friends was diagnosed with thyroid cancer that had spread to his lymph nodes. My wife was going through a lot of health stuff. We actually had a full body scan for her that day to identify any cancer. Thankfully, came back negative. But that same day, my title also changed at work, or that same week, and I was going through a big shift of clients and everything. So I should have been aware, like, hey, Justin, you know your past. These are all very high stress situations that you can't just brush under the rug and say it's fine, whatever, I'll deal with it. Like, so that night after everything, I ended up going to bed. And then I woke up at 3 a.m. and I couldn't breathe. And I went to taking a breath. Nothing happened. And my dog Gage was in the bed with me. My wife was in with one of the kids at the time. My dog stands up and he's looking at me and he's got his head turned. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like, dude, Gage told us wrong. I gotta go get mom. And I run into my daughter's room and I get my wife, and she's like, what is wrong? I was like, something is wrong with me. This doesn't feel like a panic attack. Um, and then we come in here and like I'm laying down. And I get to the point where I'm like convulsing more than I've ever had before, my whole body. And she's like, get in the car, we're going now. And we go to the ER. They're running EKGs, blood work, all this stuff. And then they're like, it wasn't a heart attack. And I'm like, okay, what was it? And they were like, what happened today? I was like, what do you mean what happened today? And they're like, what were the events of the day? And I ran them through it. And as I'm running them through it, I'm like, holy shit. Holy shit. Like,
Yep.
this is on me. Like, how could I not have picked up that this was, so I ended up having to go see a cardiologist after that, and stress test, and everything's fine. But it's just an example of, like, you can convince yourself that you're dying and think that that is the end because of stress and leaving it unchecked. Um, and whatever the factors are that are leading up to it, like, don't wait. Do not
Yeah.
wait until, and don't think that it's okay for you to handle it all by yourself. Like, we talk about that so much on here, of like getting over this macho mentality of like, I'm good, I got it.
Yep.
Keep trying that, because it's not gonna
Yeah.
it's not gonna end well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're a guy who has experience with panic.
Yeah, that's
And
yeah,
it's like almost like one would think that when you start having those physical symptoms, you would self-talk and rationalize and think, "Oh, I've seen this movie. This is a panic attack." But I think when that central nervous system triggers and starts going, it's very hard to like talk it back down,
yeah.
right?
That
But
voice is a lot louder than yours.
it's very louder. And then what I just jotted some notes, but as I'm like, you kind of laid out the circumstances that led up to the event. And I always try to drill down to what is the fear underneath, right? And when you talk about your friend getting diagnosed with a life altering diagnosis, it's like, well, what's underneath that? It's like our own mortality. And then when you talk about your wife going through some health complications, what's underneath that? It's a couple things. It's trauma. It's the fear of losing a loved one. But then again, back to mortality, which is a deep, pervasive fear, right? There's you mentioned, well, there was some ambiguity, I'll call it, in your job, which
Yeah.
underneath that is a fear of like financial
Finan
stability. Underneath that is a fear of being able to have our basic needs met with food, water, housing, and then one more, Justin, underneath that, when you're a parent, that fear of not being able to, financially meet your needs, it doesn't just impact you, it impacts your children. So then there's these really complicated fears of like, am I doing enough as a provider, as a man, as a husband, as a father? So when you have that concoction underneath and you're not thinking about it intentionally and addressing like, hey, whoa, like that's a lot. And then what you do with that realization is another story. Okay, you communicate it, you ask for help, you talk to friends, you talk to a therapist if you have one, but you had a lot going on,
Yeah.
and it doesn't surprise me that you had that event, even though like you've experienced it before and overcome
Yeah.
it, you know?
100%, man.
And I
Um,
go ahead, sorry.
no, the one last thing I want to say on this, because I think it's really applicable and it's something that I've been leaning into a lot. And I haven't talked to you about this yet, Jess, but have you ever heard of the 5 whys technique?
No.
So, Tim Marsh, I'm going to name drop him. Anybody in the Philly area who needs any sort of physical body work, from myofascial to rolfing to chiropractic, look up Rooted Somatics in Ambler, PA.
Go.
But Tim Marsh does a lot more than just body work. He has been one of my very close, I don't know if you want to call him a mentor, but he's helped me with a lot of stuff in terms of digging underneath the curtains a little bit. But one of the things that he introduced to me was this 5 whys technique. And I'm going to give you an example. But basically, to start off, it's a root cause analysis method that really forces you to understand the why behind things that you may not know
Love
are
it.
stressing you out or are causing things to be the way they are. So an example, the car won't start, right? What's the problem? The problem is I can't start my car. The first why won't the car start? Because the battery's dead, right? Second why is the battery dead? Well, the battery's dead because the alternator's not working. Third why is the alternator not working? Because the belt has broken. Fourth why is the belt broken? Because it was well beyond its service life and was never replaced. Fifth and final why was it never replaced? Because I never maintained the car according to the recommended service schedule.
Mm, shame. And like underneath it is a self-blame, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
like it's not just saying calling it out for what it is and what the situation is. It's like, oh, I had a panic attack. That's why. It's like, all right, well, why'd you have a panic attack? Well, because of the events that happened. And then, okay, well, why did the events happen and why does that stress you out? Well, loss of control and not being able to, it's like, holy shit, there's so much more to this than just the surface, you know? So
Yeah,
it helps you kind of, me at least, dig deeper into scenarios that typically I would just brush under the rug because I don't want to go any deeper. Uh,
right.
you know what I
Right.
mean?
Dude, that's super helpful and it probably applied to most things in life. I was gonna and I'll apply it right now. What happens when we're really, really stressed is sometimes we make decisions that aren't the best, right? Something very common, well, that decision could be to cope with alcohol, right? But sometimes you make these massive decisions, and I look back on the 2 periods in my life where I was absolutely the most stressed, and I made 2 decisions, and only 3 to 5 years in hindsight, I was like, "That was a bad decision for me, for my family," and then when I unpack it, it's because I was in chronic stress. One of those decisions, and you walk through this with me, was when I was successful in my career, and I decided that I'm gonna apply to the FBI because it was a lifelong dream. Well, unexpectedly, I got into the FBI. We sold our dream house. We moved in with our in laws. We started making plans and preparations for me to go to Quantico. And all of that happened because I made that decision, which was going to negatively impact my family, put a lot of uncertainty on my wife and my kids. Where will we live? How much money will daddy be in danger in his new job, right? I made all of those decisions to do that irrationally because I was stressed in my current situation. And sometimes what people do and what I've done in the past and I've learned from it is when you're in chronic stress, you make decisions to change your external circumstances. And sometimes you get stress relief by just knowing this thing will end, this period will end. And for me at the time, it was my particular job and the pressure on me and the travel and all those things. 5 whys. Why did I make that decision? I was stressed. Why was I stressed? I had imposter syndrome and I was worried about my job security, even though it was a creation of my own imagination. Why was I worried? Why did I have imposter syndrome? I was dealing with some insecurities around my own competency and experience and abilities, right? Why then? Well, because I can point to times in my adolescence and high school when I failed, dropped the ball, threw two interceptions in my first varsity football game. I had in my mind reason to doubt myself, but it was irrational. I only got through four, but you can see
You
how
don't even have to get the 5 half the time. Yeah.
yeah, but you can see how it's like, whoa, like if I think about it, and then what you can do is you can address the underlying thing. And in that case, it was my own insecurity, which wasn't healthy and wasn't helping me. And you can address that. But it's a perfect scenario. But takeaway there, and I don't have to go into the second decision, but what can happen is you can make these life altering decisions out of this place of chronic stress where you have a veil and you can't really see reality. You're just reacting and you're making these decisions to get out of a situation which might be worse in the end, but it relieves the stress in the short term.
Yeah, exactly. Those impulsive decisions look so appealing at the time, but
Yep.
without that forethought and actual, all right, well, what is this actually going to
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. Why do I feel this way? The whys, right? Go through the whys. Love that. But just a couple more facts and even some statistics around like what's happening internally to our bodies when we live in this state of chronic stress. So the first one is this, and this is from Endocrine Reviews. This is from 2021. Long-term cortisol elevation leads to visceral fat gain. And folks, that's internal fat around our organs, which has disastrous impacts on our health. Insulin resistance, which is kind of like on the pathway to diabetes, and immune suppression. Next one, men with chronic high cortisol. Again, that's the outcome from the stress response, right? Men with chronic high cortisol show up to 40% lower testosterone levels, and that's from JCEM 2019. This next one from Lancet Psychiatry in 2020. Chronic stress increases risk of heart disease, depression, Alzheimer's, and even cancer. So some of the leading causes of death in America and otherwise, and also some of them preventable. And then last one, people under high perceived stress rate their happiness 25% lower
Uh-huh.
subjectively, even when income and work hours are equal. And that's from PNAS 2022. So Justin, on that topic of really the testosterone piece, up to 40% lower testosterone. You've ventured into the world of blood work, hormones, peptides, all that. What have you learned through that lens around like stress and testosterone, and even like what are you doing proactively about it?
Yeah. I have learned exactly how important, um, minimizing and managing stress is throughout this journey that I've been on the past couple of years. Um, Even, I'll use my current example. Like, for those watching, I'm in my bionic arm brace still.
Can you
I have
show
four
that?
more. I
Can you
have
pick that up? There he is.
four more weeks in this guy. I tore my bicep tendon a month ago, um, fully, and had to get surgery. Earlier in October 6th was my surgery, so we're almost a month out. But long story short, I get blood work every 6 months from my hormone doctor, and we check everything from tests to the most insane level of detail biomarkers, which I absolutely love. This guy, he is the best doctor. But going through all of this, after I hurt myself, I ended up being due for blood work like 2 weeks afterwards. So I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting because
Yeah.
now I'm going to be able to see what actually stress and lack of physical movement and getting the rest that I normally get and recovery and everything that I normally do. Like, let's see what this does. So I have the numbers. Um, 6 months ago, my total test was 1,222. So pretty high. Um,
What's sorry, I don't and if you don't know this, it's fine, but like when it comes to testosterone total test, what
Yeah,
is
that's total, not
what
free.
free? Okay. Can you just explain that a little bit? Like, is that good? I'm asking. It sounds
So
like it's
total
high.
being that high, yes, free is what's more important. But it doesn't tell as much of a glaring story in terms of the decrease as the total does in this instance, but it did still drop after all of this. But free is the more important. To give you some pictures as to where I was at when I first started, my total testosterone was 24. So my doctor decided to tell me I was the third lowest patient he's had, and that I have the testosterone of a 65-year-old man. So I was diagnosed with hypogonadism and, put on TRT and everything. So I, over the last year and a half, have gotten back up to a healthy level and I've been doing great. Got hurt, got my levels checked again. My total test went from a 1222 down to a 643.
In half. So
Yeah.
24 started, got treatment, tracked it, healthy levels, 1200-ish, got
Mhm.
hurt, stopped working out, 600, cut it in half.
Yeah, and I even said to I had my full follow with my doctor, and I was like, "Doc, what is going on?" And he was like, "I need to ask you what is going on. Like, what external factors have you encountered?" And I was like, I hurt myself and got surgery." And he's like, "Well, there it is, Justin." And I was
Yeah.
like, because like all of my other levels, for the most part, besides some of the stress and inflammation markers, were good. But he flagged whatever other ones that increased. And he's like, "Yeah, this is external factors that are now impacting your internal markers that." He's like, I understand you don't have much control over you getting hurt, but you can control what you're supplementing with, what you're eating, your diet, your rest. Like all the things now are more important than they were before you got hurt. So it's crazy how much testosterone is impacted and how much everything is impacted by stress and cortisol. Um, and literally seeing the numbers to back it up is kind of scary, but talking about this and, making it a priority for all of us to one, acknowledge the fact there's nothing wrong with being stressed. The sooner you acknowledge it, the sooner you can do something about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And it speaks to that importance of establishing that baseline up front, right? Because if you didn't have that baseline of comparison, just to go out of a surgery and get that blood, you'd be like, all right, well, this is my number, but like, what was it? And is that bad? Is that a good thing? But let me just add one other follow-up question there. What made you the first time when you were at 24? Like, what made you actually go and get that blood work?
So it was about 6 months of no drive, no motivation. I was still working out, but my workouts were nothing compared to what they were. My sex drive was gone. I was sleeping horribly. Um, and it got to the point where I didn't know what to do, like what else to do. So, I went to a urologist first and tried going that route. And it was a horrible experience. He tried telling me that I didn't have a testosterone issue and that I was just an anxious person and that should be dealt with. And I was like, yeah, we've known this for 18 years, doc. And then went to my hormone specialist and the dosage and everything that I was on prior was wrong. And he basically saved my life. But it was just like, I didn't feel like myself. And my wife asked like, how can you describe like the feeling since now you've been on it for years though? And I think the best way to describe it is like a veil has kind of been lifted. And like, I feel just more of myself, like, and all those physical symptoms are going away. So, um, it's really interesting how much of an impact it actually does have. And now going through it, like, I want to shout it from the rooftops, for men to get your shit checked and like acknowledge the fact that you're getting older. It's okay. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let's do ourselves some favors here.
So let's get into the solutions. We'll start with this one. And Justin, I'll probably just kind of rattle through them and we can
Yeah, man.
react if we feel so inclined, right? So the first one, fitness and exercise. If you listen to this show for more than 2 episodes, it's always going to come up. And fitness and exercise is not just about how you look, it's how you feel, right? It is the single, however, most evidence-backed stress reducer. So this is from Harvard Medical School in 2023, quote, regular aerobic exercise reduces stress hormones and raises endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine. Those are the good guys. Stress
We
hormones, bad.
want that.
Yeah, less of them, more of those. Again, that's endorphin, serotonin, and dopamine. And it's just as a practical, and this is from the study from Harvard Medical School, just 20 minutes of walking or resistance training can drop cortisol levels within an hour. And then from my own experience, if you're doing the walking piece, if you can, if weather will allow, do it outside because of that.
Dude, I was gonna
Sun.
say that's been like my saving grace the last couple of weeks with the arm stitch, taking and it being autumn right now with the leaves. Like, this is my favorite time of year. So taking walks with the kids outside up to the lake and just
Yep.
being outdoors is just being in the sun, man.
Next one, sleep. This is
Mm.
from Jamaman,
I
2011. JAMA. Don't ask me what that stands for. I've read it before, but first point here, first fact: 1 week of sleep under 6 hours raises cortisol by guess how much percentage, Justin? Don't read the notes.
1 week.
1 week of sleep under 6 hours on average raises cortisol by how much?
I'm gonna say 40.
50%. You were close.
Man,
Another one for you, quiz, and lowers testosterone by how much percent?
10.
15. You're close. When I think about that, that's just 1 week. Imagine that 3 months, 6 months, what that's doing to you.
Mm.
So takeaway there. Yeah, look, if you don't know by now, you got to sleep, prioritize it, consistent schedule, bedtime hygiene, morning routines, all those things. And I'll say not everyone needs their same amount of sleep. That's a fact now. 8 hours used to be the benchmark. You can get, 6.5, 7.5, 8. The only way you're really going to know that is you're actually like paying attention to your sleep schedule, but don't get obsessed on how much. Just make sure that you're getting as much as you can, obviously. Next one, mindfulness and breath work from Stanford Medicine 2023 found that cyclic sighing, so a double inhale, long exhale, was the most effective single breathing exercise for reducing stress in just 5 minutes. Other forms of mindfulness and breath work, this might not be top of mind people, but prayer can be a form of mindfulness. Concentrating, you're focusing, you're clearing your mind. Meditation and journaling improve your parasympathetic tone. So, minus the details of how to do kind of like controlled breathing, clearly, if you're doing any form of it periodically throughout the day or one long session, it can help reduce your stress response and overall
There's
stress.
even, I think it might have been a Huberman one recently talking about forced long extended exhales and doing all that throughout the day and how that can improve HRV when you're
Yeah.
sleeping and everything too.
Yeah, and as far as like lowering or just kind of controlling your central nervous system, I found that since I've been cold plunging and my temperatures are
Yeah.
getting lower, my durations are getting higher, when I get into a cold plunge, if I immediately focus on controlled breath and even sigh audibly as I
Oh, yeah,
exhale,
it's so much more bearable.
yep, it just lowers that like kind of fight or flight response. Exactly. Exactly. This next one, man, I was excited when I wrote this outline to chat on this for a second, but faith and purpose in life can reduce stress. Having some hope that there is an afterlife is scientifically shown to be able to reduce your stress. So this is from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, found that people who attend religious services weekly had a 33% lower rate of depression and substance use, attributing it to social connection and meaning in life.
Hmm. Maybe there's something to us, Jesus freaks, Jess.
I'll say, this, Justin, but I didn't become a Christian until I was 30.
Yeah.
And when I was in middle school and even a little bit of high school, I was having panic attacks. For whatever reason, I was wired up as a kid that always like questioned these big concepts like meaning of life, purpose, why, fear of death. And I didn't have parents that were religious. I didn't have parents that talked about Jesus. So I think for me, that underlying chronic fear of like, what is this whole existence and where am I going when I die? And it's really scary that I can't escape death. That fear was driving some of that panic attacks and anxiety. And when that was eviscerated, when I chose faith, right, and then leaned into and became a believer, it's changed my life. And I
Absolutely.
completely this resonates with me in a deep way.
Absolutely.
Next one, lifestyle, right? Things we can do like today to help us with stress. First, limit your caffeine, alcohol consumption, and digital overstimulation. Second one, we've talked about this on the show. Intentionally build in margin time into your week, like just slower moments. Sometimes you use that space to gain back control, to check boxes. Sometimes you use it just to do some of these things like mindfulness, meditation, get outside, etc. And lastly, a quote from Naval Ravikant. Sorry if I butchered your name. I think it's a beautiful quote, though. So it is a calm mind, fit body, and house full of love. These
Mm.
things cannot be bought, they must be earned. It's good, right?
One. A really good one.
Yeah.
Concise, to the point, and very powerful.
Cannot be bought, must be earned. So speaking of stress, I know we got a hard stop in 1 minute. You're going to get back to your stressful life, and I'll get on with mine. Certainly hope this conversation stirred up some curiosity that could be moved to action to hopefully change your circumstances or your ability to cope. But it's been a pleasure, Justin. I appreciate you, man.
It always is, Jess. Thanks for having me. And I'll end with a quote that I got at PT today about the importance of movement. And that motion is lotion, Jess. And
Mm.
motion is the medicine that we don't look to first enough in life. So let's all lean into that with us, the stress management we're going to have in the forefronts of our brains after this amazing episode.
I love it. I love it. Well, happy Halloween, Justin. To everybody listening, hope you had a great Halloween. Thanks for joining Stronger Weekly, and hopefully both of us will see you next week. Take it easy. Well, that's it for the show this week. Really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Justin Maziarz. Always a pleasure to have him on the show. My 5 takeaways from the episode this week. Number 1, stress is deeply impactful, and it's not what happens to us, it's also what happens inside of us. Number 2, chronic stress is a real threat impacting our hormones and our mental health, and if unchecked chronically causes real harm, short and long term, including diabetes, depression, heart disease, and more. Number 3, some of the leading causes of stress: financial pressure, overstimulation, and even loss of control, loss of agency in our lives. Number 4, there is something you can do, and usually that's a combination of either changing your circumstances or improving your ability to cope with stress. And lastly, number 5, speaking of coping, some of the most important, impactful coping tools: exercise, healthy nutrition, sleep, mindfulness, and even choosing faith. So those are my 5 takeaways. Hope you enjoyed the show and had some takeaways of your own. And look, since you're still here, if you could do us a huge favor, if you could just move your thumbs around a couple more times, find that rating button, maybe even leave a review. And if you did learn something, or you were inspired, if you think this episode could help, or if you think this show could help someone you know, if you could share it with them, that would be huge, because things like ratings, reviews, sharing, that just helps grow the show so that we can help more and more people grow Stronger Weekly. And if you have a question, every so often we do an Ask Us Anything on the show. You can email us at contact@strongerweekly.com. Again, that's contact@strongerweekly.com. Ask a question, say anything you want to us, because we monitor it, and oftentimes you can actually hear your question wind up on the show. So that's it, everybody. Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope this episode helped you to go stronger this week, and we will see you next time.